Hello, Mary Perry. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and talk about my book that's just coming out today.
Me too. I was just saying to you before we even hit record that it's one of the best days for me is that when we can actually talk in real time when the book is launching on the day that it's launching. So, welcome. I can't wait to talk about your book. So, can we just have the starting point for those who are watching to just kind of get an idea of who you are and what it is that you do?
Well, again, as Jen said, my name is Mary Perry. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian, gosh, almost 13 years now, but it's actually a second career for me. I worked for the federal government for about 10 years before I decided to go back to school, become a dietitian. And the book kind of details this. It's based on my own personal story of my own struggles with food, and then kind of finding a good place with that, and then wanting to go back to school to kind of build that professional expertise so I could help other people with their struggles as well too.
And so I'm curious because, so your book is called It's Not About the Food. And so I'm going to, let's see if I can do this seamlessly, have us see your beautiful cover for just a moment.
Okay.
So you've been doing this for 13 years, you had just said. So had you had the idea of a book kind of front and center for a while? This is something that you wanted to do, or did it just kind of, come up out of the blue? Like, what was the evolution to realizing that writing a book would be helpful for your career?
Well, it's really interesting because I never thought I would ever write a book. It was never on my radar. It was never something that I really thought about. I think not necessarily a book idea, but I started thinking about it, especially in probably the last few years with my clientele that I work with. Is I really started noticing a trend is like people would come to see me for obviously nutrition. I work with a variety of people, populations, concerns. And what was fascinating to me is that when people would come to see me, it was like their little safe space. And, a lot of times people think working with a dietitian, they're going to come in and it's going to be very straightforward and it's going to be, okay, eat this, don't eat this. But people would always come and start by telling me their story. So it was never about the food, or it's really never about the food. It was about their life and what was going around and what was kind of happening with that. And so I started noticing this. And then it was actually last summer, I was on a walk with someone and we were chatting and they turned to me and they said, well, if you wrote a book, what would you write about? And immediately I was like, da, 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 da. And I kind of described what this book was. And they were kind of like taken aback. They're like, whoa. And then, I started thinking about it. And I think because for all the years of coaching, I'm so passionate about what I do. And I'm really dedicated to helping everyone that comes to see me. And I've seen the changes the clients have made by putting their, trust in me and us working together. And I really felt that the things that I've learned through myself, through my professional experience, I really wanted to share that with a wider audience. Especially now, gosh, with the pandemic, we can kind of see how that's affected all of us and our food choices. So it started, amazingly enough, with one question last summer. And then I started thinking about it and really decided just to go for it.
Wow, the timeline then is very quick. So if you were just kind of thinking about the book in the summer of last year versus having it fully written and published by spring of this year, that's really fast. So that's really impressive. So did you, as you were kind of, so I have a bunch of questions. So I'm going to
Okay.
try to ask them in a way that you can follow. So the first one is I'm curious when you, because I love the title. It's not about the food. It's so, I think it has such a punch to it. Did
Mhm.
you did you have any concerns at any point in the process in thinking for someone who is a dietitian and someone who is helping people, with their health related to food and things like that, to actually title something that seems kind of in contrast or opposition to what it is that you do? Did that ever kind of cross your mind?
Actually not, because I think I kind of have a non-traditional way of thinking about things. And I think that's also why people gravitate toward me is, again, it's like when my clients come to see me, I just embrace them, who they are, where they're at. And really, I'm always trying to understand where they're coming from and what kind of pressures they're under. And it was never really about the food. Like I'll give you a couple examples, which I talk about in the book as well, is that, people come to see me and, so maybe someone is trying to lose weight. So maybe on the surface, someone who's not, in the nutrition community might think, oh, well, they just need to eat less and move more, kind of thing. But it wasn't about that. It's like people come and share how they had lost spouses, how they had lost children, and that kind of like devastating thing that happened to them caused them to kind of seek comfort in food. So it wasn't about the food at all. It was about what was going on in their life. Or, one of the things I really noticed as well, especially during the pandemic, is that the people who tend to come see me are the very strong people. I call them the go-to people. So, I mean, we all have those in our life. It's the people that when you need the support or, you kind of like have questions and things, it's like, you can reach out to them, they're there for you. They're solid people. But what's really interesting is they're very successful in their lives and things like that. But usually food sometimes is the one area that they kind of struggle with. And so it's not really about the food for them. For many people, it becomes about food becomes the way they seek comfort for themselves when they're the strong people in their lives. So I never really had, it was such a clear message that over and over again that I would see in my practice. So I was so confident because that's really what the heart of it is. It's like I can teach you, different choices and things and strategies, but it's not about the food. It's also about the mindset, your environment, why, we choose certain things. And I think about that for myself. And I really shared that in the book, my own journey, where it made me kind of like look back, especially, and really re-examine like how that played in my life and how I struggled and how I was able to kind of like get through that.
Would it be a fair statement to say, because again, I love the title and to me, it feels crystal clear. Do you think it's a fair statement? Because I feel like you're bringing kind of like a psychology type of lens to your work. I would imagine not all dietitians do that. Is that fair? Because I feel like that seems like a unique angle to you.
I think that is a very fair statement. Again, I kind of have a unique approach. And I think what's kind of also helped me is the fact that it is a second career for me, is that, I had some life experience and, made this choice kind of later on in life. So I went back to school. Gosh, I started in my early 30s and it was quite a process to kind of go through and do that again. But I think for myself, again, I love this psychology, like, I'm happy to share, like, I know I've gone through therapy and things, and I found that very helpful to kind of examine my own life and my own choices. And I kind of try to bring that without overstepping bounds, but also to kind of bring that lens of like, how can we, examine our choices and what's kind of driving that and kind of that mindset. So exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And so I feel like I could probably answer this question. I would love to kind of hear just any elaboration to it, but the purpose, like the driving purpose behind, like doing this.
Yeah, I think again, it's like I've seen my clients are wonderful. And I just, I talk about in the book, I am so honored when people come to see me. I take that relationship so seriously because, I really want to help them. And I feel very blessed that I have been able to help many, many people in my career. And I think for a lot of people who are maybe nervous about seeing a dietitian because you're not really sure what to expect. You're not sure if someone's going to like judge you. It's a very personal topic. My goal was trying to get this message out to a wider audience. And also, we were talking about before we started, like the cover and the feel of it. When I wrote this book, I wanted it to be a conversation between me and someone I haven't met yet, who may be struggling with, the place of food in their life and how do you kind of move forward when you're kind of stuck. And so I'm so passionate about helping people. I think, and it really stems from just my years of struggle, is like, I know what I've gone through. And again, I talk about that in the book in more detail, but I think about all the suffering I put myself through, and it just kills me to think other people are going through that. And especially like with the pandemic and everything, gosh, life just got so much harder. And I really so passionately believe that we have to be there for each other. We have to help each other. And if I can do that in any way, especially through this lens, that's why I wanted to write the book.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so, so good.
Mhm.
And I had said before that your kind of evolution from kind of I not idea because you had the idea for a while because obviously that's why you were able to answer that question so quickly.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
from kind of the day that you started to now, in terms of maybe what parts of the process kind of lit you up and kind of kept you going, especially in those early days of getting the writing done.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was kind of surprised. Like I've done a little bit of writing for blogs and things in the past, but I think what I loved about it is that you can kind of like tell your story without a filter, and it's wonderful. It's almost like having someone listen to you, but you can put that on paper and kind of share that. So that kind of lit me up. And then, I was looking back last night. It's like, okay, how did I, start the process and things? And, using a lot of visual cues where instead of being very left brain and like, let me make an outline and let me cover these topics, it was doing things with pictures and just kind of brainstorming and writing down ideas and then kind of doing drawings with that. And that really taps into, that creative side as well, where you can kind of let go. So actually the process, I went into it because again, I don't consider myself a writer. And and I really didn't know too much about what the standard process is. So I just went with it organically and I just decided I would let it flow and whatever happened happened. So that's kind of how I approached it.
I love that. I love when
Mhm.
someone has kind of inherent flexibility kind of built into their own system to allow for just to have a creative process because I think a lot of times as writers or aspiring authors we're trying to like shove ourselves into a template or a formula that doesn't always work for everybody. So it seems like the writing then, even though you don't consider yourself a writer, even though you are now, as of today, a published author, welcome to the club. I feel like so many of us, myself included, I feel like that's not usually a word that I would say I am, even though I've written 6 books. So it's just it's one of those weird like imposter syndrome type of things. But
Mhm.
so it seems like the writing itself kind of came creatively and came organically for you. But what about kind of moving into that phase of editing? Was how was that process for you?
Well, actually, it was wonderful. So I was very fortunate. Publisher, publisher company is fantastic. And Bailey, the project manager, of course, is amazing. But you did a wonderful job of matching me up with a developmental editor who saw my vision and was able to kind of give me, feedback. And I'm the type, if you just give me a little nugget, I can take that and I can take care of it. And so it was actually, I feel very fortunate. It was such a positive relationship that she kind of like got what I was trying to do. And I was able to kind of like expand on what she thought I should expand on. So it was kind of a magical process, actually. It's like, I feel very fortunate, like to meet you and your team and just everybody along the way. I feel like the universe was kind of guiding me to bring me to the right people, so I could kind of get my message out.
Yeah. I love that you just called the editing process magical because that is not a word that I often hear in the same sentence as editing. That's so beautiful, and you really moved through the process so seamlessly. And for many people, it's really kind of a struggle because it's like a battle of wills and a battle of words where an editor suggests something and then maybe the author is not super keen on making whatever that suggestion is. But I feel like again that kind of flexibility kind of throughout the process can be very valuable in a lot of ways.
Well, I think it kind of reflects just who I am as a person too. And even as I work with clients, I mean, that I think is one of my strengths is like listening to where people are at and like, okay, well, this is where we are, this is where we want to get. How can we get there? And I try to be as creative as possible in suggestions, not only for my clients, but just in my own life, as well too. And so and especially now, again, with the pandemic, it's like we all have to think outside the box and kind of that word pivot always comes up, figuring out how to kind of change based on changing times. And so I just kind of try to use those skills in the process. And I think also because I never thought I'd write a book. So I was determined to kind of embrace the process step by step, even when it was challenging, even when it was difficult, because I thought I will never write a first book again, right? So this is I think in some ways, hopefully I'll have another book in me, but I think the second book would probably be harder because you kind of know what the process is and you might kind of get in your own way a little bit or get in your head a little bit too much, but not knowing, it was so much easier just to let go and I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. And so as we kind of said at the start of this, like today is launch day. So you are
Yeah.
in the throes of launch day. So how are you feeling now that, to some degree you're kind of at the end of one finish line, right? So the book is here, it's out, people can go buy it. But now you're at like the start of a whole new finish, a whole new starting line of a different race where it's now we have to get people to pay attention to it and to absorb it and to kind of embrace all of the wisdom that you're sharing. So how are you feeling just kind of like right now in this moment?
I think, excited again. When I first started as a dietitian, I worked for myself for several years, and then I ended up working for some companies, and now I'm working for a large medical practice in addition to kind of having my own private clients. So it's exciting, but I've actually been very quiet on social media the past few years, which I know is unique. So it's kind of like that aspect of trying to establish that and kind of like put myself out there is exciting. It's also a little intimidating, but again, it's like you just kind of go for it. And so that part, and I think I'm kind of excited about this next phase because again, I'm really passionate about my subject. So I think, to have something tangible like a book to kind of get that message out there, kind of, I wrote the book too to kind of give me that motivation to put myself out there again. As well. So it's exciting. And then one of the things too that my next project, again, I'm trying to work on is when I wrote the book, again, I mentioned like I really want it to be like a conversation. And I plan on making a course based on it because I really want to kind of do, the different like worksheets and activities to kind of help even solidify some of the things that I mentioned in the book of even more the practical aspects. So I have a lot of like reflection questions, but I didn't want the book to feel like work. I wanted it to feel like a comforting conversation. And then hopefully, in the next couple months, I'll finish the course and have that online so that we can really kind of work on that practical and kind of strengthen those kind of muscles.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And what's always interesting is that once the book is out there and the feedback that you start to get from people who read it and kind of are become, passionate fans of your work, it's really that feedback that's going to be what helps kind of drive the direction of a workbook and a course and all of those things. So it's always just so awesome. And you have a large kind of number of people that you have already worked with or are currently working with. So I'd imagine just from all of those different inputs, there's probably a thousand different directions of really huge impact that you can be making with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
It's good stuff. I feel like I should have asked this question before, but it popped in my head based on something that you just said. So you have such a holistic approach, which I just love that kind of holistic feel. And I feel like even when you and I had our first conversation, I was like, oh my God, this is magic. Like it was just so like exciting to know what you're doing. When it came to, because I know like sharing the stories of others and people that you've worked with is obviously kind of throughout all of what you've written. But when it came to actually writing about your story in particular, did you struggle with that at all in terms of like really kind of authentically putting your own story on the page?
It's interesting. I didn't. I think that it's a little bit more, I don't want to say a struggle because it's not really a struggle, but then now that the book's out, it's like, ooh, I put it out there, didn't I? So like writing in my safe little room, it's like, okay. And there's like, oh yeah. It's like, I told that story. It's like, oh, okay. But I didn't. So it's really interesting. Like when we're going through school to become a dietitian, I know a lot of times it's, the focus is always on the client and there's always a concern about how much do you self-share versus how much don't. And so I think the traditional training is, again, focus on the client, don't say too much about your own situation. But I think, one of the things again that draws people is like a lot of times in some of my bios or people will read, it's like, I mentioned about my own struggles with food and I specifically have people come to me because of that, because they want to know that I understand, not just from, like an educational standpoint, but from a personal standpoint. And so I think that's really important. So I'm happy to put my story out there because again, it's all about connection. And I know for a lot of times people might see a dietitian and be like, oh, she probably never struggled, or it probably was always easy. And I'm not sure if she's going to understand where I'm coming from. It's like, no, I get it. And so I thought it was really important for me to share my story. And then the other thing is, I was kind of writing the book, I think, as many people in life, a lot of times we don't take the time to kind of pause and kind of honor ourselves and where we've come from. And I'm always telling my clients about this, like we're always pausing and kind of looking at, okay, this was successful, even if it seems very, small to the person. I'm like, no, this is really good. So I think that was important for me to do as well, to kind of honor my journey as well, and hopefully, connect even better, with the people that are reading it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. And I love that. I love how you just articulated that, because there's something so powerful in just showing up and telling our stories. Because I think in so many professions, people don't want to work with someone who is too polished, too proper,
Mhm.
too like, and there's almost like a rigidness, in my opinion, kind of like a rigidness to that very clean, polished, professional kind of appearance. And it's not to say that there isn't a time and a place for those things, because of course there is. But when it comes to somebody relating with you,
Mhm.
knowing that you've struggled with it too, I feel like that it has to be the most powerful thing, especially in your work.
Well, and I think too, when you're struggling and someone's struggled, but they've come out on the other side and they've come stronger, they have a better relationship with food. It's like that's also important as well too. So, yeah, and so I think, again, I'm very passionate about working with my people. And I was telling one of my clients the other day, she's working so hard, and I'm so proud of her. And I know it's so hard because she's really dealt with disordered eating probably for 60 years. And I told her, I said, a good coach sees in you what you don't see in yourself. And so that's my role, is that for all my clients, I see where they want to go. I see the possibility, and I just help to guide them there.
Mm.
And so that's my purpose.
That's so beautiful. I feel like that's such a beautiful sentiment to kind of close on. So for anyone who, is interested in learning more about you, when it comes to the book, your book is available anywhere that books are sold. So, if you
Yes.
want to go to Amazon, you can go to Amazon, but your book is, in the link below this video as we're talking, there is a link to Amazon, but it is available on other platforms if people are anti-Amazon, which, there's definitely a movement toward that. But in terms of getting in touch with you on a deeper level, maybe someone's interested in wanting to work with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yes. So I have a website. It's just Mary Perry, all one word.com. I have an email. If you just email Mary@maryperry.com. I just got an Instagram. So if you want to come follow me, I'm going to start posting more and more. So it's just Mary Perry, my first and last name together, _nutrition. So you can find me there as well too.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for this conversation. I very much look forward to just kind of seeing how the rest of today plays out with your launch, because here we are. Like, go, if you're thinking about buying the book, like today's the day, please go buy it. We both appreciate it if you do. And then, just continuing to see the evolution of what your book does over who knows how long, because that's the beauty of books. They have a very long shelf life. So yes, it'll be interesting to see how everything happens. So thank you so much for being here. This was a fantastic conversation.
Wow. Thank you so much again. So